Chris Coons is here for our First Person segment this week. Senator, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be with you.
So you and I were at a rather remarkable ceremony earlier this week when the final group of National Guard soldiers from Delaware left Afghanistan and arrived here back in Delaware. What's kind of your thoughts on the ramping down of that?
Well, first, it was a great way to begin 4th of July week, to be with friends and family, with literally hundreds of Delawareans who celebrated as the first detachment of the 150th Engineers returned from their year-long deployment. Just to emphasize, though, the week before we had a deployment ceremony for 2 units of the Air National Guard who are beginning a term of service, one as aeromedical evacuation, paramedics of the air essentially who go to very dangerous combat situations where Americans or Afghan allies have been injured in combat, and another engineering unit that's going to be fixing base facilities. So there are still Delaware National Guardsmen being deployed at the beginning of their tours of service. I do think it is important that we continue to responsibly draw down our forces in Afghanistan, and as the current election season winds up, it is my real hope that we will see an independent, competent Afghan government, and over the next 2 years, as we pull out all American forces and end our active participation in supporting the Afghan government, that we are able to leave behind a sustainable, positive force in the Afghan military and the Afghan government.
And next door, Iraq in the news again. As a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, how concerned are you about the situation there and the developments?
I'm gravely concerned about recent developments in Iraq. Iraq's on the other side of Iran from Afghanistan, and Iran is in many ways a key driver, player in the region, and I'm very concerned that we are ending up, at least for the short term, on the same side as Iran in a fight against Shiite extremists. This group, ISIS or ISIL, they go by different acronyms, is increasingly well-equipped, well-funded, lethal, clear in their intent to attack America and American interests. And I think we're in a very difficult spot. I would not support the reintroduction of American combat troops. I think having finally gotten out of combat in Iraq was an important step forward. But I do think we have to be very mindful of the real threat to the United States and our interest in the region posed by this group. And I will support limited action, strikes, possibly even jet fighter attacks against ISIL positions if they come close to overthrowing the Iraqi government.
Concerned that becomes sort of a slippery slope to get us back in, or do you think there is enough Iraq fatigue that won't really happen?
There is a great deal of not just Iraq fatigue, but Afghanistan fatigue, frankly, intervention fatigue that I hear loud and clear from Delawareans. That doesn't mean that we should withdraw from the world. That doesn't mean that we should abandon the gains that we made, the investments that we made in Afghanistan abruptly. And it doesn't mean that we can be unconcerned about developments in Syria, in Jordan, and in Iraq. I am particularly concerned about the stability of Jordan, which has been a long and close ally, which is right in between Syria and Iraq, and I think will be the next country that ISIS will attack. I'm also concerned about our vital ally, Israel, which lives in the toughest neighborhood in the world and continues to be under the threat of a potential Iranian nuclear weapons capability. There's a lot going on in the Middle East. I had a chance to meet with Secretary Kerry about this last week. And I do think, broadly shared on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, there is a great resistance to any significant re-intervention in the Middle East.
So that sort of covers our troops overseas. When they come back, there's been a lot of troubles at the VA, and you've spoken on many occasions about the need to care for our veterans, and you sent a letter to the Delaware VA facility asking questions about their operations and whether these delays were seen here in Delaware as well. Were you happy with the response?
Well, I was pleased I got a response, and that there has been progress in reducing the backlog in Delaware, and that there's been progress in the leadership of the VA. The President has nominated Robert McDonald, who used to be the head of Procter & Gamble, a very large multinational operating company, and a West Point graduate and a Ranger. I look forward to meeting him and to having a debate about whether he is best equipped, best capable to rein in the bureaucratic excesses. Really, there was a culture throughout the country in the VA that did not convey truthfully to the leadership what was going on in the ground in local facilities all over the country. And we've got some broader questions to tackle. I continue to get individual concerns and complaints raised to me and to my veterans advocate, and I welcome any Delawareans who've got challenges in terms of accessing VA services to make sure that we're able to help them. I do generally hear from veterans that the quality of care at our VA is very good, that the nurses, the doctors are caring professionals, but the challenge they've had is the wait times, making sure that veterans are able to get the medical care that they've earned. We did pass on a bipartisan basis a bill that would provide for a 2-year relief to allow VAs with long waiting lists to refer veterans to local physicians. There's a significant cost attached with that, and we're going to need to work together in a responsible bipartisan way to resolve the VA's challenges going forward.
Let's shift over to your role as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. You've been working on funding for child advocacy centers, which is a big part in the fight against child abuse. You've also been watching the Supreme Court, but talk a little bit about your efforts with the child advocacy centers.
Well, Mark, I'm the co-chair of the Senate Law Enforcement Caucus. I was surprised when I got there that there wasn't one. There's caucuses on lots and lots of different issues. But apparently, despite all the senators with experience or background as prosecutors, or as in my case, from my time in Newcastle County, supervising and working closely with law enforcement agencies, there wasn't a bipartisan caucus dealing with the issues facing law enforcement. In that role, I've worked closely with Republican Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri on 2 different issues: reauthorizing the Bulletproof Vest Partnership, which has provided life-saving bulletproof vests to thousands of police officers, nearly 1 million police officers all over the United States over 20 years, and the Victims of Child Abuse Act, which you referenced. In both cases, there is one Republican senator from Oklahoma who has prevented those laws from being reauthorized year in and year out. And to me, inexplicably, the administration chose, because of that, to defund completely the Victims of Child Abuse Act, the child advocacy centers that it funds, 2 years ago. So I worked with Republican Senator Roy Blunt, as I mentioned, and Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, and the 4 of us over the last year were able to get past the objections that Senator Coburn had, and the Senate finally, just last week, unanimously reauthorized the Victims of Child Abuse Act. There are 3 children's advocacy centers in Delaware. What they do is make it possible, one time, one place, for a child victim of abuse to be interviewed in a way that can be used in court, but to not have to be interviewed a 2nd and 3rd and 4th time at a hospital, at a detective's office, at trial. It reduces re-victimization. It allows families and children to heal and to move forward, and it allows law enforcement to get justice in these particularly awful cases. I was really grateful for the strong support of my Republican co-sponsors on this bill.
Quickly, a couple of Supreme Court reactions on the rulings there at the end. Hobby Lobby, the ruling on contraception, quick reaction to that?
Hobby Lobby, frankly, deeply puzzles me in terms of where the court is going, in that it opens up, I think, a potential minefield here by allowing a closely held corporation to have the religious views of its owners. How exactly is the court or other courts going forward going to decide what the religious views of a corporation is? It's easy, I suspect, in this case, in these narrow facts, when you've got one family that completely owns a small business. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a small business. It's actually a multi-billion-dollar nationwide business with thousands and thousands of employees. I'm concerned that, particularly from Delaware's perspective, where we are one of the leading states for incorporation, this raises all sorts of difficult questions about corporations. Corporations are structures, legal structures, that insulate individuals from the liability of business activity. Why the court chose to allow corporations to have the same rights as individuals in terms of free exercise of religion, I don't fully understand, and I think the consequences of this will be difficult for courts to implement going forward.
All right, Senator Coons, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we hope to have you back hopefully later before the summer is over, when we can talk to candidate Chris Coons about the coming election.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. You can watch this interview when you click on the First Person tab on newsworks.org/Delaware.